It's a long 5 seconds. I welcome everyone to the March 2025 Council meeting, and I declare the meeting open at 6:31 p.m. Maribyrnong City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pays its respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I remind everyone to switch off their phones or turn them to silent. I advise the gallery that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy, however your presence may be recorded. In accordance with Council's governance rules, meetings may not be photographed, filmed or recorded without the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. I advise that permission has been given for the media to photograph item 9.1 for Sarah Carter's memorial recognition. I advise there are no apologies for tonight's meeting. Councillors, are there any leave of absence requests? No. We'll proceed to conflicts of interest. In accordance with Local Government Act 2020, do any councillors have a conflict of interest in relation to any of the agenda items they wish to declare? No. We'll proceed directly to public question time. So we're moving on to public question time. Public question time is managed in accordance with Council's governance rules. Members of the public can submit a maximum of 3 questions prior to the commencement of the meeting. As Chair, I will decide who answers the question. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. So, we want questions. So, Council has received 19 questions. I'll read out the questions. Yeah, that's fine. I'll read out the first question. The first question is by Tim Candler, who asks the following questions. Question 1. In June 2023, the late Mayor Sarah Carter announced that 5 high-traffic roads across the municipality would receive a facelift, with Summerhill Road resurfacing scheduled to start in September 2023. Despite Maribyrnong City Council including funding for improvements to Summerhill Road in 2022, 2023 and 2024, annual budgets, the overdue resurfacing of Summerhill Road is yet to commence. Now that the Lions development is nearing completion, will Council please put rate-paying residents first and fix this horrific road? And I might hand over to the CEO to answer that.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm happy to respond. As residents will know, the timing of the rehabilitation of Summerhill Road between Essex Street and Ballarat Road has unfortunately been impacted by the Lions Club development, with trucks and cranes requiring access to the site sometimes 7 days a week. The targeted concrete curb and channel repairs and road pavement patching occurred between Eden Street and Ballarat Road during the second half of 2024. The procurement of the next stage of works, involving reconstruction of the road between Essex Street and Eden Street, a new pedestrian crossing near the new development, and asphalt resurfacing between Eden Street and Ballarat Road is currently progressing, including consideration of the completion of the Lions Club development and construction methodology to minimise impacts on both local residents and the general community. It should be noted that a significant impact on road users will occur during this phase of the works, including removal of on-street parking for periods of time, management of traffic along the route and maintaining property access. Council will continue to monitor the surface of the road and maintain in line with its road management plan, and Council will also be communicating with the public and the residents early on before that happens. It's anticipated that construction could commence July 2025, weather dependent. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just was part of a question.
So, yes.
I didn't read that out. Should I read that question?
Yes, I did answer question 2, but you may like to read that out.
Yeah, so that response is part of question 2, which I'll read out now. Question 2 from Tim Candler is, as per my previous question at the 10 September 2024 Council meeting in relation to the resurfacing of Summerhill Road, given that over 6 months have now elapsed, has Council found suitable contractor to undertake the work? And if so, who is the contractor and when will the resurfacing of Summerhill Road commence and be completed? And thank you, you've answered that in your response. So we'll move on to question 3 from Tim Candler. He says, Johnson Reserve is arguably the busiest park in West Footscray, with fantastic barbecue and playground facilities and open space, which is evidenced by its popularity with young families. Despite it being such a popular and well-utilised space, Johnson Reserve lacks basic public facilities, especially a public toilet. Will the council please install a public toilet similar to the one recently built across the tracks in the much smaller Harris Reserve in Seddon? There are no public toilet facilities. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Council is currently undertaking design for a new pavilion at Johnson Reserve, which includes provision of public toilets as well as change rooms and social facilities. The timeline for construction is subject to future capital works program and approval through Council's budget process. So Council is considering its budget this year, but I can't be sure, Mayor, whether that will be this year or following years.
Thank you for that. We'll move on to next question is from Fletcher Bub, who asks the following questions. Question 1, the Maribyrnong Council Integrated Transport Strategy was originally developed in 2012, now 13 years old. A discussion paper for the ITS 2025 refresh was presented at the 23 July 2024 Council meeting, marking the beginning of the strategy's renewal. The paper outlined the Council's goal to finalise the refreshed strategy by mid-2025, following community consultations. Given that it is now March 2025, when can the community expect an invitation from the Council to participate in consultations and provide feedback on the ITS refresh?
Thank you, Mayor. I can answer
Hand it
that.
back to you.
As some residents may know, and certainly councillors, that in the first half of 2024, we did undertake community consultation in regard to the integrated transport strategy, and Council has progressed now with drafting a new integrated transport strategy. The second stage of community engagement on the draft strategy is due to occur over April and May, and depending on the outcomes of this engagement, it's expected that Council will be presented with a final draft in June, July. Certainly, if we need more consultation than that, I'm sure the councillors will consider that.
Thank you. His second question is, can the Council provide an update on the Maribyrnong Public Toilet Plan 2019 to 2029, including which facilities have been completed and what is planned schedule for the remaining installations?
Thank you, Mayor. The following outlines the toilets that are delivered and are in progress and those that will be part of future open space improvements. So the following projects have been delivered just recently: the Hanson Reserve West Footscray, Crookshank Park Yarraville and Harris Reserve Seddon. So those public toilets are completed. These public toilets are in progress. The Footscray Wharf, and that project is under construction with completion due in August 2025. The Yarraville Gardens is under construction with completion due in May-June 2025, and Cranwell Reserve Braybrook with completion due in December 2025. And the following have been listed as part of future open space projects: the Quarry Park Footscray and Johnson Reserve West Footscray, Dobson Reserve Maidstone and Robert Barrett Reserve Maribyrnong. With the strategy now at its halfway point, Council will be conducting a review of the public toilet plan to ensure the planned locations meet the needs of the community. Community engagement will be undertaken in April, where the community will be encouraged to provide their views on the new locations.
Thank you. Third question, in the interest of financial transparency and meeting ratepayers' expectations, can you please provide details supporting your response at the last council meeting regarding the recent announcement of the Creative West project, specifically how the 100 million construction cost was estimated? Please include details on who conducted the cost estimates, when they were performed, and any public available references related to the project, as would typically be expected for public works of this scale.
Thank you, Mayor. Creative West, formerly known as Next, has been a project that Council has advocated for since 2016. The project seeks to deliver an inclusive place that welcomes people of all ages and backgrounds and invites residents, visitors and tourists to enjoy It will be a major facility that has library, performing arts and cultural facilities. Through community consultation, the concept has been designed to respond to the community needs, and in 2020, Council resolved at a council meeting to match up to $5 million in funding contingent on state or Commonwealth support. In February 2025, the Federal Minister, Catherine King, announced Council's successful grant application through the Urban Planning Precincts Giants grant stream. The estimate of probable cost for the project were prepared by SGS Economics and Planning Pty Limited. Council is currently only committed to the design phase of Creative West, not yet to the construction, and that will of course depend on the outcomes of the design phase and the final cost. The final cost will be refined over the next 2 years as the detailed design progresses, and large projects like this certainly do require extensive planning, community consultation and investments from several levels of government, not just council.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question by Cowpaw Chris Hui, who asks the following questions. We have a recurring issue with trucks crashing into the wall at the Leeds Street entrance to our Footscray Market, especially around midnight on Sundays when deliveries occur. Although there is no CCTV installed at the entrance to Footscray Market facing Leeds Street, it is too far to capture the trucks entering Leeds Street. There used to be a pole at the Leeds Street entrance that was effective in preventing this, but it is no longer there. Could you please advise why the pole was removed?
Mayor, we've just got this question in today, and I will need to take that part on notice. At the time of responding, we're unable to confirm why the pole may have been removed. However, officers would welcome a discussion with the questioner, Mr. Hui, to follow up with a response, and we'll make contact with him in coming days.
Thank you. Move on to next question by Madeline Surley, asks the following questions. Question 1, why did Maribyrnong Council allow 5 shipping containers to sit in the Anglers car park, risking public safety for 8 months without requiring a planning permit?
Mayor, Council commenced planning enforcement regarding the placement of shipping containers without a planning permit immediately upon being notified by members of the community. So Council certainly did not allow the shipping containers there. It is standard practice for planning enforcement activities to pause while the planning permit process is underway. This is Council's preferred method for resolving non-compliance with the Maribyrnong planning scheme, seeking compliance rather than pursuing punitive action.
Thank you. Next question. When will Maribyrnong Council provide an itemised breakdown of all grant monies for the flood recovery?
Thank you, Mayor, and I did respond to some of this at the last meeting. Maribyrnong City Council currently has 2 recovery grant programs, the Community Recovery Hubs program and the Community Recovery Officer program, jointly funded by the Victorian and Australian governments. The last expenditure report was in July 2024. The Community Recovery Hubs grant has been extended until the 31st of December 2025. An updated expenditure summary will be provided in April 2025, aligning with Council's reporting requirements to Emergency Recovery Victoria. The grant scope is for community connection initiatives, education, capacity building, staffing and recovery support outreach. Programs are guided by the Community Recovery Committee and the broad Maribyrnong community through the Maribyrnong Community Strengths and Opportunities Workshop. Project suggestions or feedbacks are welcome to ensure the program is meeting community needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the third question. Council imposes specific flood designs for new homes on LSIO, which is land subject to inundation overlay, that raise building costs by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Melbourne Water may impose a condition in a Maribyrnong Council planning permit that gives Melbourne Water a complete indemnity, meaning the resident waives all rights for flood damage and contents. This condition is under Section 173 and stays on the title. This condition means the property cannot get flood insurance, and without this insurance cannot get mortgage financing. How many properties in Maribyrnong have this condition on title?
Thank you, Mayor. Council is not aware of any titles that have such a restriction. Melbourne Water requested such an agreement for one planning permit application prior to the October 2022 floods. However, this was subsequently removed at the request of the property owner.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question from Brian Saunders. Question 1, referring to the recently removed playground in Nicholson Street, for which the reason given by the Mayor was due to antisocial behaviour. The playground was well used by children in its early days but was allowed to fall in a terrible state due to social issues in Footscray. Is it now Council policy to simply remove all entertainment in Footscray rather than actually addressing and advocating to the state to address said social issues?
Thank you, Mayor. If I can respond, certainly this is not a policy of Council, and we have never advertised this as such. In regard to the playground, there was 3 months of community consultation before that removal. The social issues impacting the Footscray CBD are many and complex. Council continues to explore a range of initiatives, including events and activities to activate this area, supporting local traders, increasing local law's presence in the area, and increased cleaning and graffiti removal. In addition, we continue to work with a range of other stakeholders, including the state government, advocating for support and assistance to address these social issues.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, I think we might need to just extend public question time.
We will. Thank you for that. Let's just go back to... Yeah. We'll actually have to extend, as Councillor Thomas has pointed out, with the consent of Council, and I wish to propose an extension to public question time of 15 minutes. And Councillors, do I have your consent? Yep. Yes. Thank you, Councillors. We'll now continue with public question time. Thank you for that, Councillor Thomas. So question 2 from Brian Saunders is the recent announcement by the Commonwealth of $5 million in funding for Creative West comes with a requirement for Council to also tip in $5 million. When will Council release the business case to justify this enormous expenditure in a cost of living crisis?
Thank you, Mayor, and I have answered some of this earlier, but the investment case for Creative West is not a public document at this time. It was used as a part of the funding submission to the Commonwealth Urban Precincts Program. Council resolved in 2020 to support the detailed design process for what was then called Next, with a $5 million co-contribution, provided that there was matching funds from the state or Commonwealth. As detailed at the last meeting, this will be expended over multiple budget years and will be part of Council's annual capital expenditure program.
Thank you. And third question is, has Council costed the ongoing operating cost of Creative West upon completion?
The full operational cost has not yet been determined. Of course, as you would understand, Mayor, we have a lot of work to do in that area, as it will depend on the outcome of the detailed design and any decisions of their management and operating model. With an expanded level of services aimed at supporting the needs for open space, community services for current and future Footscray residents as our population increases, there will be a need for additional operating expenses. More library staff will be needed, but the operating model of the performance space has yet to be finalised. The design process will occur over the next 2 years, with construction dependent on capital support from both the state and federal governments.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next questions submitted by Ken Betts, who has submitted 3 public questions, with the second question being in the form of a statement. While Council's governance rules allow for the provision of public questions, it does not provide for statements to be made. But I thank Mr. Betts for the statement, however, wish to advise that the statement will not be read out at this meeting. His first question is, will Council care about its city and clean up the Nicholson Street Mall and ensure that is regularly maintained?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Council's cleansing unit certainly undertakes the daily pressure wash of Nicholson Street Mall. We've actually increased the cleansing that we're doing in that area. We're also cleansing Chambers Lane and Byron Plaza Monday to Friday. Illegal graffiti is identified by Council's cleansing unit during their daily rubbish removal tasks, and offensive graffiti is removed within 24 hours by Council. We do, if I could mention, Mayor, we do have a web page on the work that we're doing in Footscray CBD, so I would encourage residents who are interested in this to have a look at that web page and more detail of the work that we're doing.
Thank you. His next question is, does Council have an Easter activity promotion program for families?
Mayor, Council has an extensive program of events, festivals and activations throughout the year and across the municipality. This Easter, Council has the following events occurring at its libraries. On Wednesday the 2nd of April, an Easter-themed story time with craft at Footscray Library. On Monday the 14th of April, Easter-themed baby rhyme time at Footscray Library. The week prior to Easter, all libraries will have an Easter-themed Lego template for children, and an Easter book display will occur at all libraries through this period. Community organisations are also welcome to apply via Council's Community Grants program for specific Easter events. This will now be for the following year. We've allocated the grants for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Jennifer Shimei, who asks the following questions. First question, on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, I submitted a request along with supporting documentation regarding the persistent parking congestion caused by Angler's Tavern customers in our residential area. To ascertain the progress made on this specific matter, I respectfully ask the Council, could you please provide a comprehensive step-by-step timeline outlining the actions taken by the Council and specifically by the Transport Engineering Department since the submission of my request on that date?
Thank you, Mayor. Council has received correspondence from residents who reside in Clyde Street and Leopold Street in Maribyrnong regarding increased on-street parking demand due to non-local vehicles parking for extended periods. To investigate these concerns, Council's Engineering and Transport Department has met with 6 concerned residents and conducted on-site parking occupancy observations 4 times on different days and at various hours to better understand the concerns. A draft proposal has now been developed to address this issue and will be shared with residents in the coming weeks to ascertain broad support before any implementation. The proposed parking restriction changes will aim to ensure sufficient parking availability for residents and their visitors whilst maintaining adequate parking turnover.
Thank you. And question 2 is, I have submitted a petition regarding the Angler's Tavern's planning permit for the retention of 5 shipping containers in a flood-prone residential area. Could the Council please provide a clear timeline for the Councillor's review of this petition, Council's review of the associated objection and Council's assessment of all relevant planning considerations, particularly the risk of land inundation?
Thank you, Mayor. The petition received will be tabled and considered at the next Council meeting and a response provided accordingly. The petition will be considered as part of Council officers' assessment of the current planning permit application process.
Thank you. We move on to a question from Christopher Shurab, who asks the following questions. Question 1 and 2, I'll read them out together. What is the estimated time frame to finalise a plan to revitalise the Footscray CBD? And second question, is there any reason why consultation with the community regarding the revitalisation of the Footscray CBD cannot begin immediately via platforms such as Your City, Your Voice or letterbox drop-offs?
Thank you, Mayor. The Footscray Structure Plan and Public Realm Plan are under review this year with a range of short-term actions to be implemented, including the upgrade of Madden Square. The timing of formal consultation is typically informed by the level of details and information available to actually consult on. So at the moment, we don't have those plans finalised. That said, we're always open to and welcome community ideas and suggestions to revitalise the Footscray CBD. And of course, we do have a project in this year's budget, Mayor, in regard to Madden Square.
Thank you, and I think that concludes public question time. So I now close public question time at 6:55 p.m. I'll move on to agenda item 6.1, which is confirmation of minutes from the 18th February 2025. Just let me open it up. And I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lamb. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. All those in favour?
Excuse me, the councillors to state the motion.
Yep.
Official recommendation that council confirm the minutes of the council meeting. Now on the
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
I think Councillor Thomas has seconded.
No, Councillor Meredith.
I'm
Would you like
sorry,
to speak to
Councillor
the motion? No. Okay. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? That's everyone. The motion is carried. I'll move on to reports from committees, and I advise councillors that there are no reports from committees this evening. We'll move on to petitions. And councillors, we received one petition this evening. I would advise councillors that in accordance with council's governance rules, a councillor may read the petition text, but is not permitted to speak to the petition. Agenda item 8.1, petition food program at Nicholson Street Mall. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Semra. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Yengi.
He needs to read the motion.
Yeah. Councillor Semra, if you could read the motion.
The council receives and notes the petition, food program at Nicholson Street Mall, and requests the Chief Executive Officer to consider the petition and determine the appropriate response.
Thank you. We can't speak to them. So, yeah, I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I did. Yeah, I did record your seconded. So, sorry, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Okay, the motion is carried. I'll move on to officer reports. Agenda item 9.1, Serracada Memorial Recognition. Councillors, tonight we have a significant item to consider as Maribyrnong Council formally recognises the invaluable contribution of former Councillor Serracada, a loyal, passionate and tearless advocate for the Maribyrnong community. To give due consideration to this item, I am proposing that Council suspend standing orders. I call for a councillor to move a motion to suspend standing orders. Councillor Thomas. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Could I please invite, we're lucky enough tonight to have Sarah's mother here, Gaynor. Could I invite you to come up, please? Yeah. She comes up and you give it to her up here. And Councillor Lamb, I believe you're going to join the Mayor.
Thank you, Gaynor, and I extend that to all of Sarah's families and friend, partner Nikhil. Thank you for being here today, and just wanted to say a few words on that it's with a heavy heart that I present this item to you today. Former Councillor Sarah Carter was a trusted and valued friend and colleague to many of us. Her sudden passing deeply shocked and saddened staff, councillors, and many members of our community. The outpouring of grief has shown the high regard in which she was held by those she worked so hard to support. Her passing was an enormous loss to our community, which she tirelessly served for 16 years on council. During her term on council, Sarah achieved remarkable achievements. As a strong and female leader, she was instrumental in Maribyrnong towards Gender Equity 2030 strategy, which guides the council's efforts to achieve gender equality, prevent gendered violence, and support victims and survivors. Her dedication to advancing community well-being, arts and culture, and gender equity in particular was second to none. Sarah's strong leadership in social programs provided much-needed support to vulnerable groups, making a lasting impact on countless lives. We all witnessed her relentless optimism, strong community focus, and inclusive approach, whether this was in chamber or out in the community. She was known for her glass-half-full attitude, which inspired those around her. It is important that we remember the incredible contribution she made and the values she stood for. Recognising the significant outpouring of sentiment following the sudden passing of Sarah, Council established an online memorial page to capture community tributes. The launching of the memorial page was a way of capturing community sentiment with a view to sharing with Sarah's family. The tributes received have now been compiled into the memorial book I've just presented to you. And it's my absolute pleasure to present this book to you. Gaynor, thank you very much for accepting it. I'd now like to ask Councillor Lam, who wants to say a few words, and any other councillors as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor. For me, is that have been working with like Sarah Carter for many years. She's an intelligent woman, beautiful, is own way caring for the community, the resident, regardless where they're coming from, which background. She's own way there to support and to work really, really hard, tirelessly working with her big responsibility. Having working with her mayor, deputy mayor, I found it's a wonderful working, they support one and another. She's an icon. It's great loss for the community.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to thank the family for coming in tonight, and also for your generous donation of the robes. We know, that's a special item probably for you, but for you to give that over to the community, we really do appreciate that. And I recall the first meeting after Sarah's passing, all of the councillors around the table just reflecting on her, as the Mayor said, her enthusiasm, her energy, and her intellect and her fantastic strategic mind, and at the time, and that of course still stands. So really, our condolences to you all. Thanks.
Councillor Semrey.
Sarah Carter was a giant in the community. I remember when I first started out in community work, I wanted to start a soccer tournament. And someone had told me that the mayor had Instagram. So I had reached out, and that day of the tournament, she had a flight to attend, and she went out of her way, made sure to come, say hello to myself and other young people in the community. So she really loved her work, and it showed through her actions. And the work she's done is going to leave a long-lasting legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Semrey. I think, Gaynor, you would like to say a few words. I'll just... Sorry, Councillor Yingi, I didn't see Councillor Yingi.
That's okay, sorry. I just wanted to, just echo what Councillor Bernadette's mentioned and thank the family for coming in here today. I didn't personally know Sarah that well, but I have heard a lot about, the work that she's done in the community, and I know that she's very loved and admired, and just a total loss to our community. I think it was a total shock for everybody, upon learning of her passing. So I'm really glad that you guys could be here with us today, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Any other councillors? Maybe I'll hand it over to you again. Please, you can sit.
Thank you. I'm here tonight with great pride to accept the memorial book, but also feeling the tragic passing of my beautiful daughter, Sarah. Sarah worked on council for 16 years, bringing her passion and determination and working tirelessly to bring better amenities and outcomes to the local community. Whilst working a full-time role with Save the Children, she committed many long hours in her week to representing the council, notably as a 3-term mayor and also council's equity ambassador. She would always say with love and pride, West is best. Tonight is an opportunity for me to thank council, Cook, Celia, Ella and Michael for their support in bringing together a beautiful service for Sarah and for the presentation of this memorial book. I believe that future permanent memorials are to be approved by council tonight, the lasting memory and legacy of Sarah, my daughter. I thank the council and councillors in advance for making this possible. It is a great relief to myself and my family that Sarah will not be forgotten for the work that she contributed to the city of Maribyrnong. So I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done. I'll now proceed to resuming of the standing orders. I call for a councillor to move a motion to resume standing orders. Councillor Lamb. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pereira. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We will now move to a formal consideration of item 9.1 of the agenda for Sarah Carter Memorial Recognition. I call for a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council formally recognises the invaluable contribution of former councillor Sarah Carter with parts 1, 2, 3 and 4 as below. Part 1, naming a contemplative seat at Blacksmith's Footscray Wharf in honour of former councillor Sarah Carter. Part 2, creating a new Sarah Carter gender equity category in the Maribyrnong Council Civic Awards in honour of former councillor Sarah Carter. Part 3, displaying Sarah Carter's mayoral robes within the Maribyrnong Council chamber in honour of former councillor Sarah Carter. And Part 4, council requesting a further report on an appropriate naming proposal in honour of former councillor Sarah Carter.
I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lamb. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Just only to, again, just reiterate what a tragic loss this has been for our community, and acknowledge the significant work and contribution Sarah's made to our community. And I think that, you know, we're really honoured to have had her on council, and really, really happy that we're able to honour her.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. Again, thanks very much, friend Nikhil and friend come over here and join with important night tonight. Sarah is a pillar of the community and advocates for the community, a leader, a role model for women, an extremely smart and talented person. When I meet someone, they talk about Sarah, they say, oh, that intelligent, that's a lady, beautiful lady. You know, they were so shocked about that. So anyone, to people, the resident, the business people. I know this report outlined several initiatives to honour her in amazing work, that her legacy and what she believed in. One of the options presenting this report is the Mayor Rob, and this report that the place in the chamber, and I believe it will be fitting to honour her, because I know Sarah was so proud to her achievement in becoming the city's first 3 terms female mayor in 163 years of the civic administration. She was a role model and aspiration to the young girls and women in our community, and dedicating so much of herself to support them. Sarah brought energy, enthusiasm, and creativity to all that she did, and was so proud to presenting the West. Like Gaina says, she very played the West is the best. There's no doubt that Sarah's spirit will live on in work, and she did in her heart to whoever knew her. So she's a wonderful woman, and for the community, for the resident, for everybody, everyone know her. It's just such a terrible thing about that. So I commend the motion to you all.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira.
I'd just like to add that Sarah Carter was so well known and very well regarded, and I'm sad to not have known her better. And I'm sure we would have had a lot in common. And I commend her work on council, and especially her gender equity work. And I note that there are actually 5 female councillors here now, so I think that's a lovely recognition of her passion as well. I love the array of things that we have before us to honour her legacy. The contemplation seat by the river, be a beautiful place of reflection, I hope. And the robes in the town hall, thank the family for the generous contribution to us. And also, of course, the Gender Equity Award, which I think is a great reflection of her passion and her work. And yeah, finally, just thank you for being here tonight.
Any other councillors? I'd just like to mention a few things. That part 4 of the recommendations that council request a further report on an appropriate naming proposal. I know the family and others have seen a version where there were recommendations to name a few sites, including the request and also the kindergarten, Randall Street Kindergarten. So I'd just like to note on that if there's any recommendations regarding naming proposals, they are subject to Maribyrnong City Council's geographic naming policy, and that policy ensures that proposed names comply with the state government's guidelines established under the Geographic Place Names Act 1998. and the naming process involves community consultation, and the final outcome is contingent upon approval from relevant authorities, and the whole process may take between 6 and 12 months. So that's why we've changed that part. I know the family had seen an earlier version of that, but that's the reason, because of the necessary permits that we need to follow. That's the reason why we've recommended this. So that's all I wanted to add. But thank you, councillors. I know that a majority of council here are new, and we did not have that extensive time that someone like Councillor Lamb or maybe Councillor Thomas would have had with Sarah. So in the time that we've been here, I'm sure each of us have been touched by her works, as Councillor Pereira mentioned. And, you know, we appreciate all that she's done for Maribyrnong City. And I'd just like to thank the family once again for coming down. Thank you very much. Moving on, would the mover like to exercise? Oh, we don't have exercise. So I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. If it's okay with councillors, we'll just wait a couple of minutes for Councillor Lamb to return. We'll now move on to item agenda 9.3, the Annual Community Survey 2024. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi. Did we miss?
Have we skipped over one?
Sorry, I'll retract that. I've missed one agenda. We're jumping too fast. I'll go back to item agenda 9.2, which is response to notice of motion 2024/03 Activity Centre Amenity. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council 1 note that roller doors, shutters detract from the overall amenity of Maribyrnong activity centres. 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to resume planning, compliance and enforcement activities in respect of roller doors and shutters, with the focus to be on education rather than punitive action. And 3, note the delegation of the Manager, City Development, to consider requests to waive planning permit application fees.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pereira. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, I think just to say that this is something that was considered by the former council, and, you know, with the sort of the intention, I guess, of, you know, it being part of the revitalisation or perhaps of Footscray CBD, and we know that there's a lot of continuing interest in what happens in the CBD area, and, you know, hopefully, you know, removing the roller shutters will be sort of one of the things that sort of adds to the amenity in the area. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Semra.
Yeah, also I want to highlight that, you know, we value our local businesses and we want to create a vibrant, welcoming precincts. While roller shutters provide security, they also impact the look and feel of our streets, reducing foot traffic and business activity. Our focus is on education, not penalties. To support businesses, indirect financial support has been explored for those replacing shutters. We're here to work with you to ensure our shopping areas remain secure, accessible and inviting for all. Small businesses, I believe, are the backbone of our economy, local economy.
Thank you, Councillor Semra. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira.
Yeah, just to say that making improvements to Footscray is a team effort that requires government, council, community and traders and landlords to work collaboratively towards creating better amenity, and that we're here to work with you to deliver it. And we appreciate the businesses that have already started the process of opening up their shop fronts to improve passive surveillance and visual connection along the streetscape. And an active edge is crucial to life on the street and a strong local economy. So yeah, as Mohammed also said, if anyone has any questions or concerns, please contact us and we'll work with you.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Now we'll get to item agenda 9.3. Thank you. Annual Community Survey 2024. And I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council note the findings of the Maribyrnong City Council 2024 Annual Community Survey shown at attachment 1.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. Our council, we did community consultation every year. However, every year we improving each year, getting better and better. This year, I would like the resident to see the attachment and see the result that where we good at, where we having not fast reflection, but excellence work. They are really pleased to point out there's a number of services which is very crucial, and the community is very satisfied with that. Library, people from diverse community background to be accessible for that. So the customer services, I'm very in favour about customer service. We always want to improving every day for the resident and the community where they can access the service. The children from baby to 5, and there's all the service there is improving a significant from compared from other year. And thank you so much for the department. I believe that the directors, Lisa King, and also Lauren McKenzie is the manager of customer engagement. So all the best and thank you so much for your hard working. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Are there any other councillors who'd like to speak to the motion? Councillor Semra, did you? No? Okay, that's fine. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. And we'll move on to item agenda 9.4, Municipal Association of Victoria, May 2025 State Council. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Pereira.
that council approve the motions for submission to the May 2025 State Council of the Municipal Association of Victoria as shown in Table 1 of this report.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Semrau. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
As the delegate to the MAV, I'm excited to take these motions to the State Council. Maribyrnong Council's key advocacy asks to the MAV focus on issues like gambling reform by implementing the recommendations from the You Win Some, You Lose More report and increase state funding for essential services such as the State Emergency Service and expansion of the electric bus fleet. Additionally, councils seeking MAV support for improved integrated planning and funding for community infrastructure, including strategic cycling corridors and the full implementation of recommendations from the inquiry into the local government funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? No, thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll now put the motion. Sorry, Councillor Thomas.
That's right. I might just mention probably the one that's the biggie in there is supporting the inquiry into local government funding and services. And as everybody in this room knows, and a lot of people who are hopefully watching tonight know that, councils are finding it increasingly difficult to balance our budgets and provide those services that we know our community needs and that a growing community expects and needs. And so this, for me, this one is the big one, because a lot of what we do hinges on having the money to provide services, to provide community infrastructure, to provide, great local jobs for our community as well. So, yes, I really hope that other councils support the one about the inquiry, because we do really need the state government, I think, to have a look into the revenue structure and the ongoing ability of councils to be financially sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any other councillors? No, thank you. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll move on to item agenda 9.5, the Australian Local Government Association 2025 National General Assembly. I'll call for a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council endorse the motions for submission to the 2025 Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly as shown in Table 1 of this report.
Thank you. I'd like call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? No. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? No? Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas?
Thanks, Mayor. I think we've, with the help of the officers, of course, have assembled, a really reflective group of motions, I guess, that respond to the needs within our community, but of course, as they need to reflect the needs of communities across the country. Of particular interest to me is, calling on the government to adopt and endorse the recommendations of the You Win Some, You Lose More report into gambling reform, but also, again, looking at adequate funding for, roads and other infrastructure, and, looking at properly, mandating and supporting, the transition to 100% renewable electricity and electrification within the community, which we know is very important to our community. So I think it'll be the Mayor who will be at the Assembly with hundreds of other mayors and deputy mayors and councillors across the country voting on a whole manner of things. So yes, let's hope that our motions get across the line from all the other councils across the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, and I'd probably also reiterate that what you've said, that the motions put forward, taking into consideration everything that's going on are fantastic. And I mean, the transition to 100% renewable electricity, increased funding for roads recovery, research and funding into early warning systems, and the gambling reform. So I'll be very happy going to that forum. So thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to that motion? No. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to item agenda 9.6, the Heritage Advisory Committee Terms of Reference Review. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks. That Council 1 endorse the Maribyrnong Heritage Advisory Committee Terms of Reference shown at Attachment 1, subject to the following amendments. Section 2, Objectives, inclusion of an additional objective to support the protection and management of First Nations sites of cultural and spiritual significance. B, Section 4.1, Membership, inclusion of Friends of Footscray Park to the committee membership composition of professional members. And 2, note the proposed nomination process and that a further report will be presented to appoint members to the Maribyrnong Heritage Advisory Committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Semra. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Oh, sorry.
I
Forgot to turn my microphone off. Just to say, this is, of course, one of the many community advisory committees that Council has, relying on that sort of local expertise, and particularly in this case, local expertise of heritage issues that cross not just post-colonisation issues, but also with the addition of designated positions on the committee for Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and Bunurong groups, and having that additional objective of protecting and managing sites of that are significant to First Nations people. People might think that we don't have a lot of heritage, but we really have a lot of. Sometimes you can't always see the physical heritage, but we also have a lot of cultural and intangible heritage here, with sort of the waves of, particularly through the waves of migration, and in terms of importance of particularly Footscray and Seddon to First Nations activism and advocacy mostly in the last century. So this is a really important advisory committee to be on, and hope that we have lots of applications for the positions, and also particularly for the special position that we have in this term of this group for someone under 35. So a little shout out to all the young people out there. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? No? Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira.
I'm looking forward to seeing the outcomes of this committee. I'm personally passionate about good architecture and urban design and sites of cultural significance, especially as a way of understanding our past, present and imagining our evolving future. I'm glad we have a strong Indigenous component, and I'm sure we'll bring a multicultural lens, and suggest that this committee has a key role to play in our capacity for inclusion and belonging in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. And I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Thomas for the inclusion of Section 2A there. Really appreciate that, so thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Nope. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Move on to item agenda 9.7, Maribyrnong Aquatic Centre Energy Upgrade Funding. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council note, it has been awarded $2.5 million funding under the Commonwealth Government Community Energy Upgrade Fund. 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute the Commonwealth Government grant agreement, Maribyrnong Aquatic Centre Electrification and Energy Efficiency Upgrade. And 3, note that project funding of approximately $3.5 million will be referred for the consideration in the future budget deliberations for 2025-26 and 26-27.
Thank you, Councillor Yingi. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Semra. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, just to mention that this is a fantastic win for our municipality, and you know it aligns with our strategy for sustainable energy, and also moving into sort of, I guess, more what do you call it? Electrical usage. I also just wanted to note that this is going to provide considerable savings for council. I think we're looking at approx about 400,000 a year. So yeah, this is a huge win for us, and yeah, a huge win for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Yingi. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate Councillor Yengi's point that this is definitely a win for the community, especially for ratepayers. There will be obviously savings of approximately $400,000, and that goes a long way.
Thank you, Councillor Semra. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas.
This is a really fantastic project. Typically, aquatic centres are gas guzzlers, and if anybody's read the report, you can see just how much gas they're guzzling and money and emissions. But there are not many aquatic centres that are electrified. There are a couple of new ones, and I can't recall any that has done the switch from gas to electrification. So this is a really great leadership story for our community, not just, you know, we often talk about being leaders, but this is like a really practical, I guess, example of a council taking a leadership role. It's a hugely expensive project, and, you know, on the back of what I've just said about, you know, revenue being always tight for providing infrastructure, I'm really excited by this because we can really hold our heads up high. The officers have done a great job of you know, sort of assessing our greenhouse emissions profile. This is the highest energy user, so we're targeting our money at the right end of our emissions use, and it's going to be really great when we can tell all the other councils as well that when we have an electric run, renewable energy supported aquatic centre. So big thanks also to the council officers who were able to put that funding application together to bring in the $2.5 million as well.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, and I'd just like to add that we were one of the lucky councils to receive the 2.5 million. There were many submissions, and we were one of the rare ones, certainly one of the metro councils to receive such an amount. So well done to all those involved. Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll move on to item agenda 9.8, amendment to the 2025 City Development Delegated Committee meeting schedule. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lamb.
Office recommendation that council, in accordance with the closed hand of the governance rule, not the June 2025 City Development Delegation Committee has been rescheduled to 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, the 18th of June 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarifications? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll move on to agenda item 9.9, Council Support and Expenses Report, November 2024 to December 2024. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas. I'll call for a councillor to second. Oh, sorry, please read out the motion.
That council notes the councillor support and expenses report for 13 November 2024 to 31 December 2024 period to be made available via council's website for the term of council.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
The seconder like to speak to the motion? Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll move on to agenda item 9.10, Governance Report, January 2025 and February 2025. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
Maribyrnong Council's that Council note the January 2025 and February 2025 Governance Report.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally move, thanks.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Mayor. I just would really like to say that this, for people watching on the streaming, this is an expression of Council's transparency around the things that we do talk about. So if people are interested in, what, conversations or what councils have been briefed on, what happens at advisory committees or other committees that councillors are delegated to, this is the agenda report to read, and there's a lot of information in there for people who are wondering, what happens outside of a council meeting. So,
thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any other councillors? No. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We'll move on to agenda item 10.1, Notice of Motion 2025/02, Enhancing Community Safety and Wellbeing in Maribyrnong. I'll call for Councillor Semler to move the notice of motion.
That Council acknowledges the community concern regarding the increase in antisocial behaviour and perceptions of safety and amenity in Maribyrnong, particularly with respect to the Footscray CBD. 2, reaffirms its commitment to fostering a safe, livable and just community in line with Council's social justice framework and preventing harm from alcohol and other drugs policy. 3, notes the complexity of the issues presenting and the diverse needs of people who experience homelessness, have mental health issues and are impacted by drugs of dependency. 4, notes the work already undertaken to address these concerns, including the Future Footscray Forum, the Creative Places Project, as well as support for community organisations and commercial festival producers to activate Central Footscray with events that drive visitation and passive surveillance. 5, acknowledges the collaborative work with police, housing and outreach health agencies aimed at prioritising public health and harm reduction. 6, supports residents across the municipality to build awareness and implement crime prevention strategies such as the Neighbourhood Watch. 7, requests that the Chief Executive Officer prepare a report outlining a potential community safety and wellbeing action plan. The report should include the feasibility, cost and funding opportunities for any proposed initiatives to be presented at a future council meeting. The plan can include, but not be limited to, opportunities for improving street lighting in high-risk areas across the municipality, exploring how council can further support community-based solutions to drug and alcohol-related harm, particularly in the prevention and early intervention space, increasing CCTV coverage in key public spaces, increased street cleansing, graffiti control and waste management in areas of high foot traffic, including streets, laneways and public spaces to improve safety and amenity. Strengthening community engagement initiatives that explore place-based models that address local safety concerns. And 8, requests that the Mayor formally write to the Premier, the Minister for Health and the Minister for Mental Health and Wellbeing, advocating for increased investment in outreach, mental health and other support services in the City of Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Councillor Semler. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Yengi. Are there any questions or points of clarifications? Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Councillor Semler.
Community safety is a growing concern for Maribyrnong residents, particularly in high traffic areas like Footscray CBD. where reports of antisocial behaviour, property crime and poor lighting contribute to a sense of insecurity. Data from the Crime Statistics Agency Victoria highlights Maribyrnong higher than average crime rates, specifically in theft, property damage and drug-related offences, with Footscray among the western suburbs most affected by public order issues. Addressing these concerns requires a proactive approach, not just enforcement. This motion calls for practical measures such as improved lighting, CCTV where possible, and better street maintenance to enhance public safety, while also investing in early intervention programs and harm reduction initiatives that tackle the root causes of crime. Community safety is closely linked to social issues like homelessness, addiction, and mental health, which demand stronger collaboration with outreach services to provide the right support rather than displacing vulnerable people and moving people along. Additionally, this motion urges the Victorian Government to increase funding for outreach, mental health, and drug and alcohol services in Maribyrnong, as these challenges require more than just a local government response. A safer Maribyrnong means working together, residents, businesses, community organisations, and all levels of government, to build a city where everyone feels secure, safe, and included. This motion also aligns with several state laws and policies that guide councils in creating safer communities. The Victorian Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006 requires public authorities, including councils, to consider the right to safety and security in their decision-making. The Victorian Mental Health and Wellbeing Act 2022 recognises the need for an integrated approach to mental health and addiction issues, ensuring people have access to appropriate support services rather than being criminalised. And Crime Prevention Act 1993 encourages collaboration between councils, law enforcement and community organisations to develop effective crime prevention strategies.
Thank you, Councillor Semra. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Just only to briefly mention that we recognise that safety and crime is a growing concern in the community, and this was something that was certainly raised whilst I was campaigning by residents, but also upon being elected, I've received numerous emails from residents on. We, as a collective council, are interested in this matter, hence the motion that's been provided. But I'll speak for myself now. I recognise that this requires a multi-pronged approach and will require a lot of collaboration with service providers, the police, and community. And we are very committed to working together and collaborating to provide the necessary support, but also education and awareness, and support the community as much as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Any other councillors? Councillor Thomas?
I guess, just to support what Councillor Semra and Yengi have said, particularly around that, the collaborative response that's needed. Council can't respond to all of the issues on its own. We've had some help from the state government with additional outreach support, and we're very, very grateful for that. But we need that to continue, and we need that to increase. And I know that we're not the only council in the western suburbs that is experiencing these issues, but really we do need that ongoing support and investment in our community for those people who are the most vulnerable in the Footscray CBD. So really a big call out to the state to do that. So I'm glad that that's part of the notice of motion. And also just wanting to sort of, I guess, talk directly to those people who have contacted us, with their concerns, and the traders who are really, they're trying really hard to continue their businesses in circumstances that are difficult and complex, and I know that they're doing their best, and I guess want to reassure them as well that, council is listening to them. We're doing what we can through this process and other processes, through the budget process. We'll be considering additional investments. So just want to let them know that we haven't forgotten, we are listening, and we're doing what we can, and ourselves, but also collaborating with the state government as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any other councillors? Councillor Lamb?
Thank you, Councillor Mohammed. for raising that issues, and other councillors have similar concerns as well. And we do listen to the business owner, business people and the resident. I reiterated that business is very important. It's a backbone for the council. So we do listen, and that way we always support you with the festival, which a lot of activity is a festivals around, and improve the business in the Footscray or Maribyrnong area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Any other councillors? Councillor Meredith?
Yeah. The issues in Footscray, there's a lot. There is some crime, there is some mental health stuff going on. There's a multitude of issues, and it can't be just resolved with one approach. So it needs the collaboration. It needs a person-centred approach as well. Like there is behind that suffering, there is a person, and we have to remember that that person is, was once a child and is now an adult. And we do need more supports in Footscray, like that is, and in Maribyrnong, like in the West. It's great that we have had some increase with the outreach, but that does need to increase a lot more. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Any other councillors? I'd just like to say that as representatives of Maribyrnong and each of our councillor wards have a responsibility to ensure that our policies and actions are forward-thinking, inclusive and responsive to the needs of our diverse community. So I know this motion highlights Footscray CBD, but in many ways it relates to the whole city. So this motion seeks to address the safety and well-being of our residents, and I commend Councillor Semra for bringing this great motion to Council, so thank you. I now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. We now move to Councillor question time. Councillor question time is managed in accordance with Council's governance rules. Councillor question time is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. So, what are the questions? Do any councillors have questions? Councillor Yengi.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so last week, Melbourne Water briefed councillors on the proposed flood mitigation study that will be carried out by Jacobs, and have advised that the study is expected to take approximately 18 months to carry out before any proposed options can be presented to the community. My question is, can you advise what actions and/or measures Council is intending to implement in the interim to support our community with flood preparation and flood management?
I'll ask the CEO to answer that.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Yengi. Maribyrnong City Council, through the Community Recovery Committee, known as the CRC, has identified preparedness as a key priority area and is implementing several initiatives. And if I can just go through those. Firstly, we're establishing the Maribyrnong Neighbourhood Flood Network, a network of trusted community leaders equipped with information on flood risk and preparedness, with training provided by the Victorian SES and the Australian Red Cross. Secondly, we're scheduling a community planning day for the Maribyrnong community to participate in a facilitated discussion to develop a community-owned flood document. Additionally, a preparedness program will commence in April in partnership with the Victorian SES and the Australian Red Cross. Thirdly, we're working with Melbourne Water and the Victorian SES to explore reinstating property flood risk charts in Maribyrnong. Fourthly, we're developing a guide on insurance preparedness with input from insurance and recovery experts, and that will be launched very soon in late March. And fifth, the flood recovery program includes various social connection opportunities post-flood aimed at building resilience. I think it's also worth noting that Council is working with the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, and through the Victorian SES is updating the Maribyrnong Local Flood Guide based on community feedback. The Victorian SES are also updating the Municipal Flood and Storm Emergency Plan. And Council is working with Melbourne Water to provide advice during the planning phase of the flood mitigation study consultation to ensure community needs are considered. So these measures aim to provide a comprehensive and partnership-based approach to enhancing flood preparedness and management within the community.
Thank you, CEO. Any other councillor questions? Councillor Meredith.
Yep. So my question is for Celia. Given the significant safety concerns on arterial roads within the city of Maribyrnong, such as Hopkins Street, Ballarat Road, Francis Street, Williamstown Road, Whitehall Street, what advocacy has council undertaken to advocate for safety improvements? And I'll read the other bits. Has council engaged with state government and the Department of Transport to address these issues? What steps have been taken? And what further actions does council plan on taking to help support these roads to be safe and to have the necessary upgrades?
Through the Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Meredith. There has been many years of continual work in this area, and we certainly don't give up and keep moving on that. So Maribyrnong's Road Safety Strategy and Action Plan 2021 to 2030 outlines Council's approach to improving and managing road safety throughout the municipality with a vision towards zero fatalities and a decrease in all crash injuries within the city of Maribyrnong by 2030. This includes continued advocacy to improve the safety and operation of arterial roads across the city. Over the years, Council has been actively advocating for safety improvements through regular meetings with the Department of Transport and Planning and direct communication with relevant state ministers. And as many of you know, the Mayor and I meet with many ministers, some on a regular basis. We've seen encouraging progress, but we acknowledge that there is still much work to be done as the city experiences continued growth and change and increased transport demand. So some recent positive outcomes have included the implementation of the 40-kilometre speed limit reductions along Moore Street, Whitehall Street and Hopkins Street in Footscray. The Area 40, or 40 kilometres an hour, which has been introduced for the Josephs Road precinct, and speed limit reduction along Ballarat Road from 70 kilometres an hour to 60 kilometres an hour. And we would hope that we maybe even see some more reduction there on Ballarat Road, particularly with the new hospital coming on board. Council is also supporting various changes relating to the Westgate Tunnel project, including truck bans for large freight vehicles on Somerville Road, Francis Street, Buckley Street and Moore Street, and safety improvements for cyclists. Council is committed to continue advocating for the safety of all road users as a priority, and we will keep working in partnership with the state government and the Victoria Police to ensure these vital roads receive the attention and improvements they need.
Thank you, CEO. And so, Councillor Semra, you have a question?
Yep, I have a question. Well, first, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are currently in the month of Ramadan, a significant time for many members of our community. According to the latest census, over 3,600 residents in Maribyrnong identify as Muslim, contributing to the rich diversity that makes our city unique. Can the CEO outline what initiatives are in place by Council to acknowledge this important month?
Through the Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Semra, for your question. Council supports the recognition of Ramadan and Eid through a range of programs and events that we provide in partnership with the community. So this year, and each year it's different, and it also depends on our events program and which groups have applied for certain events. So on the 6th of April, the Salam Fest will host Eid Festival at Kindred Studios. Eid is the biggest celebration in the Islamic calendar and enjoys a long-standing artistic and culinary offerings of Muslim culture and heritage, and that will be celebrated there. Secondly, the Maidstone Community Centre have partnered with the Iceberg Foundation in Footscray to hold a small Eid dinner at the community centre for people within their local community at the request of the foundation. And also the foundation has requested that that be an event just for that community, so we certainly respect that. The youth services are hosting a movie night this Friday, and they're also supporting an iftar celebration event supporting the Sudanese youth group on Sunday evening. And fifthly, Council is also supporting the African Business Association with a sold-out event this Friday, which we expect will attract close to 130 people. In addition to the support for these events, our library services curate a book display during Ramadan, for which we've received some very positive feedback, and we're also recognising Ramadan and Eid with a number of social media posts and staff bulletins.
Thank you, Celia. I'll just give give the community a understanding of what Ramadan is. Ramadan is observed by Muslims worldwide as a month of fasting, reflection, prayer, and community connection, and it is observed by many Muslims in our community, and it's great to hear that Council is celebrating that. Fasting from dawn to sunset is a core part of Ramadan, but is about more than just abstaining from food and drink. It is a time of self-discipline, gratitude, and empathy, reminding those who observe it to reflect on their blessings and be mindful of those in need. It is also a time of generosity, where many engage in acts of charity and service to others. More broadly, Ramadan highlights values that resonate with people of all backgrounds: compassion, resilience, and a sense of togetherness. As a diverse and inclusive city, this is an opportunity to learn more about the experiences of our fellow community members, whether by offering a simple Ramadan Mubarak to a neighbor or a friend that is Muslim, or participating in any local event, so even borrowing a book from the local library. I also want to acknowledge the federal government's recent announcement that March 15 will now be recognized as a national day to combat Islamophobia. This is an important step in ensuring that all communities feel safe, respected, and valued. Recognizing and respecting different cultural and religious traditions only strengthens our society and the shared values that connect us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seymour. Yeah. Any other councillors with questions? I've got one for you, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is Council aware that the Steel Cement Pty Ltd has lodged a VCAT appeal P143/2025 against its refusal of planning permit TP53/2023-1 with objections due to VCAT by 31st March 2025? And what actions is the Council taking in response?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we are aware that an appeal has been lodged at VCAT, and Council will be making legal representation against this matter. And we will keep councillors updated with that through our weekly planning report.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, councillors. Any other questions? No? So, councillor question time is now closed. Move on to urgent business. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? Nope. We'll proceed on to confidential business. There's no urgent business.
There's no
I
items.
advise councillors that there are no confidential items to be considered at this meeting. So I now declare the meeting closed at 8:05 p.m. Thank you, everyone.